Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Vega Virtual Talks number 7. Today, we're going to discuss digital transformation, strategic direction for brands. My name is Narita Pretorius. I'm the Vega Talks facilitator, and I'm also the campus head here at Vega School in Durban. So the structure for our discussion today is we'll start with a quick introduction. Then we're going to have our two speakers who will present. They will each get about 20 minutes to pitch their topic and ideas on digital transformation. And then we'll proceed into discussion. We've got 3 questions we have collected from our RSVPs and consolidated in. And if time permits, we'll also allow for some live Q&A afterwards. I would like to quickly introduce Greg O'Day. Greg is the editor and journalist of KZN Invest. He's also our Vega Talks partner. All good ideas start with a coffee, and as one does, we did that, and that's where Vega Talks then was originated, and we still continue to do this. And Greg interprets the Vega Talks into articles for us. Our first speaker that I'd like to introduce is Tim Mitchell. Tim is a digital transformation leader, and his expertise and his passion sits in this very topic, so it made perfect sense to invite him to the session. He's held leadership positions at Flux Labs and at Deloitte Africa. He is a specialist in digital transformation, innovation, strategy, and customer centricity. Tim spends his time shaping the digital transformation journeys for corporates and entrepreneurs across sub-Saharan Africa, leading engagement teams, facilitating digital workshops, presenting and speaking on panels at digital conferences, guest lecturing and MBA supervising at Gibbs Business School, and coaching the next wave of emerging technology startups. Tim, thank you for joining us today. It's a great pleasure having you here.
Thanks for having me on board, Narita. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. And then our second speaker is Keke Mahlelebe. Keke is also a Vega alumnus, so he studied here actually at the Vega Durban campus. He's the partner, head of strategy, MNC Saatchi Abel. So at an early age, Keke started out in social and digital, working on anything from a tweet to an AI football bot. He broke SA Twitter for a day, running the highest ever recorded redemption mechanic campaign, written for Fast Company, and appeared on ENCA on the future of advertising in the connected age. He believes in creating ideas for a digital world rather than digital ideas. Now focusing on integrated communication strategy and leadership as partner, head of strategy, MNC Abel at Cape Town, looking after a team of strategists and a portfolio of new economy and challenger brands in retail, e-tail, and B2B across FMCG, tech, and culture, from Takealot to TikTok and a whole lot more. Keke clearly keeps himself super busy. He also heads up the Account Planners Group, or the APG, for South Africa, having built up a network of over 100 strategists across Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. Keke, it's a great pleasure having you here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you again. All right, let's get straight into it. So session 1 is going to be Tim. Tim is going to take us through his presentation. And Tim, I really look forward to hearing your ideas on digital transformation, and everybody enjoy the discussion.
Thank you very much, Narita, and good day and welcome to the Vega friends and family. Thank you so much for having me on board today. So my name's Tim Mitchell. I'm the head of digital transformation at Flux Labs, and over the past 8 or so years of my career, I've been trying to figure out what on earth this term called digital transformation really means. Many of you might have heard it in different contexts, both through your learning or through the different careers or career paths that you have in your workplace. And a quick Google Trends search actually reveals that the term digital transformation and chief digital officer have grown in popularity by 300 to 400% over the last 5 years. So clearly a topic that's up for real debate, and one that is really setting the scene for the future of how businesses remain competitive going forward. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is a little bit around some of the key lessons that I've learned throughout my career relating to digital transformation. I'll give you a bit of a definition about what I believe digital transformation really means, and then walk you through a few case studies and examples about how it comes to life. And just to give a bit of background about where many of these lessons and stories come from, over the past 8 years, I've spent time advising many top corporate blue chip companies throughout sub-Saharan Africa on their digital transformation journeys. So really from a strategic business perspective, helping to guide these businesses into the future, as well as many startups. So not only the corporate side of things, but from a startup and entrepreneurial perspective, helping many of sub-Saharan Africa's leading technology startups to harness the power of digital transformation to accelerate forward and create exponential value in the work that they do. So many of these lessons come from my background in that space, and I'm excited to share these with you. I look forward to engaging with you, and if you do have any questions towards the end, please feel free to shoot them through. I'd love to get into a discussion with you. So as we kick off, I did mention that I've got a definition of what I believe digital transformation to be. But before we get into that, I want to show you a quick video clip that helps to explain what digital transformation is most definitely not. So just to highlight, this is not what digital transformation should look like. And give me a moment while I toggle screens. Hopefully we can all hear the video. The irony would most certainly not be lost on me if a specialist in digital transformation is unable to share screen and show you a video. So let's give this a shot.
Playing jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're gonna do one more.
Ah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open. Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey, open door.
Play on the floor.
It's on the floor. Open the door.
Wrong
Open the door.
command. Error.
Hey there, with a rock. Open door. Open door. Open door. Higher.
Higher volume.
Higher.
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 All right, I'm back. So poor guy. We have this image of a guy who thinks he's got his life all figured out, got all the latest tech, all the gear, no idea, and unfortunately, the technology doesn't work to his favor. And he, could have lived in this more simplistic world where things just work and are intuitive and make sense and resonate with the customer. Yet he's ended up complicating his own life. And to me, that brings me to, if that's not what digital transformation looks like, then really, what does it look like? And I've got a little definition around digital transformation that I like to keep very simple. It's this one on the screen right here. And there are 4 parts to it. So it starts off by saying digital transformation is a mindset. So if you think from a business context, you have your leadership, you have your senior management teams, you have your middle management, and then you have an army of workers who bring the delivery of your product or service to market every day. And that mindset needs to be led from a leadership perspective and cascaded all the way down throughout the organization so that everybody is crystal clear on that North Star ambition that they're setting for the future of their business. So that speaks to the strategic mindset of digital transformation. The second one is that digital transformation is a new way of doing business. And a time like COVID has really shown us that this has become extremely apparent, and the fact that we need to do business remotely and virtually in many cases has resulted in new tools, new techniques, new ways of working, collaborating between teams that are multidisciplinary, have different skill sets, different time zones, use different technologies, and all coming together to do business in a new way. So the world is changing fast, and this one speaks to the behaviors and the habits of what it takes to become an agile organization and do business at the speed of digital. The third part here is a really important one, And I hope it resonates a lot with many of the customer and brand related people in the Vega community. It's because digital transformation is intrinsically organized around our customers. This means we don't just do digital transformation for the sake of it, but we need to think of what our customers' job to be done is. Is there a particular problem or opportunity in their lives that we can help them to solve? And how do we organize our businesses around those needs to deliver a superior value proposition to the customer? And then the fourth part, and there's a very good reason why I've kept this part last, is that digital transformation is enabled by technology. Now, there's a common mistake that many people make in thinking that digital transformation needs to be led by technology. But I often say, start with the people and then work backwards to the technology, because that'll help you figure out what enablers you can use in this new technological landscape to deliver your value proposition faster, better, or smarter. So think of it more as an enabler than a silver bullet in of itself. And I did promise that I've got a few lessons around digital transformation that I'll be sharing with you today. So that actually segues precisely into my very first lesson that I'd like to share with you. And it's something called the technology fallacy. The fact that digital transformation is actually less about technology than you might realize. There's a great book out there called The Technology Fallacy that was co-authored by a couple of my ex-colleagues back at Deloitte. And it speaks to the fact that you need to align your organization and the people around what digital transformation really means and how you can bring it to life to add value to your customers and to your employees before you consider what the technology stack looks like that will enable you to get there. And there's a quote from this book that stood out for me that read as follows. It says, "We define digital maturity as aligning an organization's people, culture, structure, and tasks to compete effectively by taking advantage of opportunities enabled by technological infrastructure, both inside and outside the organization." So that speaks really to the fact that this new digital landscape allows us to create new value inside your organization and find ways to optimize and create efficiencies, but also to create value outside of your organization and to create and capture value from our customers. But it starts with the people, and you'll see there it talks specifically at the beginning of the sentence to things like people, culture, structure, tasks, and only later talks about the fact that it's enabled by technology. So this new technology landscape that we found ourselves in is truly powerful, but I would certainly caution, as perhaps the first and foremost lesson that I've learned relating to digital transformation, is that we shouldn't get hung up on the detail of the technology, but rather think of the value proposition and later how you can enable that through technology itself. So the second lesson that I want to share with you is just around how our world is changing. This digital landscape is enabling hyperbolic growth and rapid growth in the economy. And what you'll see on the screen flashing before you is just a view of the world's 10 most valuable companies by market cap. All the way back from 20 years ago to pretty much current day in the year 2020. And you'll see a shift in the types of businesses. The key story here is that digital enables these hyperscale businesses and the creation of digital value like we've never seen it before. So what you'll notice on the screen is that as we see a falling away of traditional players in industries like energy, retail, banking, healthcare, and so forth, we now see this emergence of companies that are really digital technology companies. And as of today, approximately 8 out of 10 of the world's most valuable businesses are in fact digital businesses. They're built on digital platforms, and they enable this hyperscale growth to create and capture new value in the digital economy by adopting some of the traits and some of the DNA components that I'll talk to you a little bit later that enable exponential value in the digital economy. So if we move on to the third lesson that I'm going to share with you, and let's just zoom into perhaps those top 5 digital companies that are listed over there. So we've got the likes of Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Google's holding company, Amazon, and Facebook. We all know very well what these companies are famous for, but there's a key lesson here that digital enables these businesses to morph. A truly digital business you can think of a little bit like a shapeshifter. Because they're built on this agile technology stack of some of the world's leading exponential technologies, and they're really smart in how they develop their business models. They're able to move quickly into new sectors, new adjacent spaces, and new market positions that enable value. So let's start off with Apple. I'm sure we all know them very well as the electronics manufacturing giants of the world. The iPhone, the iPod, the MacBook, the Apple Watch, and many of their other famous inventions. But did you know that Apple is also making an aggressive move into the financial services space? And this is something that many people never would have seen coming. A lot of our banks, a lot of our insurers and investment managers are now worried and wondering what it is that Apple is going to do to disrupt their industry, as they've launched their Apple Card and a credit facility linked to Apple Pay that allows people to make seamless transactions a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently than it would be with many of the traditional financial services providers. So our next shapeshifter over here, Microsoft. We all know them very well as a PC software developer. I'm sure most of you make use of many of their products on a daily basis. Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Hopefully none of you are using Microsoft Internet Explorer, but they certainly are famous for the many software packages that they've delivered over the years. But I bet you didn't know that Microsoft is actually making a move into the healthcare space. And it was announced a couple of years ago that Microsoft is partnering up with researchers to develop a cure for cancer. And the way that they're approaching this is quite interesting. If you think of their core strengths in software development and coding, they're clearly very good at creating new pieces of code, new pieces of software, and also debugging software that is faulty. And so what they'll be doing is treating the genome for cancer in much the same way that they would a virus or a bug in a computer system, to decode those components of the cancer genome and remove dangerous components that will help people to stay safe from cancer in the future. So quite an interesting pivot and a new market position that Microsoft is adopting in that case. The next one, Alphabet. Of course, we know the search engine. I'm sure all of us use it almost every day when we need to Google something or find out a key piece of info. But Google's made quite an exciting move into a brand new space. And this space is gaming. They're taking on the gaming industry, competing with the likes of Sony PlayStation and Microsoft Xbox to launch what they've called Google Stadium, a brand new gaming on demand platform. You can think of it a little bit like the Netflix of gaming that really democratizes the way in which people access games. And you can get on demand access to any game that you like from any device. When connected to Google Stadium. And this is seen to be a $180 billion industry that Google is moving into quite aggressively. Amazon, of course, not just an online bookstore. We've seen them move into many spaces over the years. They're now one of the world's foremost e-commerce giants. But aside from their e-commerce business, where they actually make a lot of their money, and perhaps up to 50% of their revenue is from their web servers. And this was an interesting pivot where Amazon said, look, we've noticed that we're so good at creating web servers and cloud storage and cloud services for our own business. So why don't we spin it out and offer it to other businesses who also require these types of services? And this component of their business has been so successful that in some quarters it actually eclipses their e-commerce revenue based on the sheer volume and value of clients that they have on their Amazon Web Services servers. And finally, the last giant over here that's morphing and shape-shifting is Facebook. We've seen them in a number of different formats. Of course, we know them as a social network, the owners of Instagram and WhatsApp as well. But they've started making a move into the space of cryptocurrency and taking on traditional store of value through their Libra platform. They're also looking at integrating cryptocurrency and payment wallets into their app services. So you can think of making a payment to a friend or a family member as easy as tapping a button inside the Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp direct messenger, or even Instagram direct messages feature. So really making it a lot easier to access cryptocurrencies and to pay service providers, friends and family using these mobile services that we find ourselves engulfed in almost on a daily basis. So that's just a bit of a view on how these businesses are changing and how they're rapidly moving into new spaces to create new value. Which brings me to my fourth lesson. And this one over here may look a little bit complicated, what you see on the screen, this is an equation. And I'm sure you didn't come here for a mathematical lesson today, but where this comes from is actually from one of my mentors and a very good friend of mine. His name is Walter Adeo, and he was my previous Chief Digital Officer back at Deloitte Africa. He's also a Singularity University faculty member, a professor of practice at the Joburg Business School, and he was selected as one of the top 200 business transformation leaders around the world for his work in digital transformation. So as you can imagine, a pretty smart guy, and occasionally he says something that's pretty smart and profound. And this was certainly one of them. This is what he defines as his digital transformation equation. It talks to how businesses create exponential value in this digital economy. And it's a lot more simple than it looks. I'll walk you through it from left to right. Basically, what it says is that the creation of exponential value is possible through 3 digital transformation dividends. So you see there, the G, the P, and the X all stand for something quite specific. And these are really the value drivers. This is how businesses create value in the digital economy. The G stands for growth. So growth relates to new revenue, new sources of value. If you launch a new product or a new service in market, or enter a new market space with an existing product, you'll be able to create and capture new value through growth. So that growth talks to our first digital transformation dividend about how businesses are capturing the power of exponential technology to grow into new spaces and to create new offerings that create value for the business, but also for customers. The next one is the P. The P stands for productivity. And this one speaks to more of an internal focus. If you look inwards into the organization, the P stands for productivity because technology and digital transformation allows us to do things faster, smarter, and more efficiently. So we're able to optimize processes. We're able to disintermediate inefficient processes. We're able to speed things up. We're able to automate things in a production line or in the way in which we deliver products and services to customers. And at the end of the day, this helps us to increase our margins because our cost per unit, or our marginal cost to do business, becomes smaller and smaller while that value to the customer increases. So that just creates more room for margin and more room for value for businesses at the end of the day. And then finally, the X. The X stands for experience. And in this case, one that I'm quite passionate about is the fact that digital transformation allows us to bring superior customer experiences through to our customers. So you can think about elevating the way in which we deal with customers through different channels, looking at perhaps an omni-channel experience. If you start on a certain device in a process and you pick it up later on a different device, you should be able to pick it up right where you left it off. We need to create these pleasing customer experiences that exceed expectations. And of course, customer service at the end of the day really needs to understand this changing world of what customers demand. And I'm sure all of you know that the modern age customer is perhaps the most demanding customer that we've ever seen. And businesses need to stay on their toes to deliver the most superior experience to our customers. So where this equation goes next is to say the creation of exponential value is made possible through those 3 digital transformation dividends. And it is made possible at the point where the capex of the robot is less than the opex of the human. Now, I might have lost you for a second over there, but let's just take a quick deep dive into what that last part really means. So when we look at the capex of the robot, that really means the price it costs to invest into new technology, be that new core systems inside your business, new channels, perhaps quite literally some sort of robotics or some sort of artificial intelligence or emerging technology. The price that it costs to invest in that technology is getting cheaper and cheaper over time. And we're starting to see a trend where it's becoming cheaper than the OPEX, the operating expenditure of what it costs to pay a human to do many of those tedious and sort of repetitive tasks. So you can imagine, if we take an example here, if we're looking at a production line, perhaps there's someone whose specific job is to stamp an item that comes through the production line to certify that it's of a certain standard. Now, this process could quite easily be automated. You could use a blend of robotics, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, and perhaps optical character recognition to look at that item as it moves through the conveyor belt and determine from a systems level whether that product is fit to go forward into commercialization, or if it needs to go back to be fixed. And previously, a human might have done this job, but it's one of those jobs that is quite repetitive, quite mundane, and high levels of repeatability. So in that case, if the cost of automating that particular task in the production line, or the cost to invest in technology that helps to do it quicker and smarter is less than the cost of the human, then it makes sense that you will create exponential value through one of those through one of those digital transformation dividends. And that's just a quick example on how we look at that equation. And of course, it's not to say that the robots are coming to steal our jobs, but at the end of the day, digital transformation and technology should augment the human. So we're not going to replace the human and do away with jobs. We're going to augment the human and help them to do their job in a more meaningful way, so they can focus more on human-to-human engagement and the tasks that require a real human touch, rather than those repetitive tasks that are quite difficult to engage with or derive real value from at the end of the day. So that speaks to how businesses are creating exponential value in this digital economy. And the final lesson that I want to share with you today is to say, all right, Tim, we understand. We see that the world is changing. We understand that businesses are morphing. We understand that there are new ways to create value in this digital economy. But how do we get it right? How do we make the moves that are required to move into this new digital transformation landscape? And to me, there are 5 critical factors. This comes from Deloitte Digital. They've got something called digital DNA that defines a number of different digital traits that are required in some of the world's leading digital transformation businesses. And if we look at an aggregated cluster of 5 of them, it starts off with digital leader and talent development. So first of all, this looks at the types of digital leaders who are able to attract, develop, and retain the best of breed digital talent in the world. Bringing on new skills, retraining, reskilling people so that they're fit for the future. And a great example of a company in this case is Netflix, a service that many of you, I'm sure, have made use of during the lockdown. I recently read the book by Reed Hastings called No Rules Rules, which speaks to the way in which he's attracted, developed, and retained this amazing digital talent, and how he hires to create a culture of digital talent through software engineers, data scientists, product managers, creatives, artists, even anthropologists, leading by context instead of control to create the next generation of leaders. So that strong digital leadership is the first and foremost critical point in developing your digital transformation strategy. The next one is a culture of innovation. So number 2 over here looks at embracing what we like to call a succeed fast approach. So you actually need a well-governed space for experimentation, which might sound like an oxymoron, but you need to set those guardrails in place that help you to focus your innovation in the right direction. And a company that I really love in this case is Google. I think Google does a phenomenal job at helping their employees to stay innovative. And they've got what they call the 20% of time policy. This implies that their employees are free to spend 20% of their time innovating and looking for new products and new offerings that they can launch and disrupt in the market. And this is actually how the Gmail service was invented, through the 20% of time policy. They also have Google X. This, as many know, is what they term their moonshot program, which looks to innovate around topics like healthcare, connectivity, agriculture, energy, robotics, artificial intelligence, and many other emerging technology spaces. So really creating that culture that welcomes and invites innovation. The third one, you need to create a balanced digital portfolio. And this one speaks to the fact that we need to be able to eat what we dream. So you need to balance short-term profitability with long-term growth. And you need to prioritize the right balance of digital initiatives along your roadmap. So you don't start with the things that are too big or too difficult, but you gradually iterate and move your way along the journey. And a nice example here is Tesla. Many of you know Elon Musk, an ex-South African who has built a fantastic business. He has this future vision for what mobility could look like around the world, but he's balanced that with more concrete and tangible products, such as their batteries for the home, their autonomous vehicle, artificial intelligence, energy storage, automation, artificial intelligence, as well as renewable energy through solar panels that he's launched for the home. And all of this fits into a balanced portfolio of how he sees the world moving towards the future of mobility. The fourth one over here is cross-functional collaboration. This really means breaking down silos within your business and inviting the creation of cross-functional, multidisciplinary, multi-skilled tribes who come together. A great company that's done this quite effectively is ING Bank from Amsterdam. And what they've done is created these agile tribes who they encourage to come together to solve very specific problems based on their personal preferences. So their boss doesn't tell them what to do, but rather they come together and form these different teams, address the problem, solve the job to be done, and then disband to find the next big problem. So it's a real agile and iterative approach that they've built to teaming and solving for customer problems. And the last one I'll share with you today is around building a robust digital ecosystem. And in this day and age, we need to accept the fact that we can no longer be the best, the fastest, the smartest at absolutely everything. We can't be everything to everyone, but we need to leverage an ecosystem, a network of partners. And these partners could be gig economy freelancers, they could be startups, they could be contractors, they could even be people that we used to think were our competitors. And we often talk about co-opetition, the balance between collaboration and competition in building this digital ecosystem. And a nice recent local example that I've got over here is Vodacom. Many of you might have heard the news quite recently that they are launching the Vodacom VodaPay super app. Now this super app is a partnership with Alipay. So they've recognized that one of the global platforms that is really getting this right and creating a super app of e-commerce and microservices is someone that they can leverage and work together with. And once they've partnered with this technology player, Alipay, from the East, they've also recognized that they need to bring the right sort of microservices offerings into their platform. So as of today, they only launched, I think it was last week, they've already onboarded over 70 merchants. And some of the biggest retailers within South Africa now sell their products through the VodaPay app, which is a great example of leveraging this robust digital ecosystem. So those are my 5 lessons and 5 of the key DNA facts that'll hopefully help you to understand a little bit more about what I believe digital transformation to be and help your businesses into the future in engaging with digital transformation. So I think my time is most probably up. I'm going to ask Narita how we're looking on time, if we'd like to head over to Keke.
Yeah, I think it's time for Keke. This is great, Tim. Thank you so much for the very insightful guidelines that you've provided. So this is where we go. Tim drops the mic. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Narita.
Very helpful. But I always love when we listen in on these conversations and when we share these kind of experiences and insight, that very last slide of the right DNA. For those that have dialed in, you can actually have a look at the previous Vega Virtual Talks that we've had on leadership and innovation. And it complements what you've actually pointed out, Tim, just on what is the DNA that you need to consider to have something like digital transformation, but in general, also the good culture that you need to create within an organization and the leadership that comes with it. So brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Tim.
Thank you very much.
We're going to move into Keke's session. So Keke, over to you. We look forward to hearing from you and see how that also complements what Tim provided us with.
Great. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So firstly, thank you, Narieta and Team Vega for having me. I'm really excited to be sharing my thoughts today. I suppose because I get to approach the hugely complex, layered, and challenging topic of digital transformation from a creative angle. So hopefully I'll get to break some rules and completely shatter your perspective on what it means for you, your brand, as well as your business. So, Dumilang, this is me, and since we're talking digital transformation, I thought it would be very apt to transform myself into Memoji form. So that's me. And just a bit more about myself. So as Narieta mentioned, I head up strategy for MNC Saatchi Abel's Cape Town campus. But I suppose what's really interesting about my journey specifically is that it started over 7 years ago in social and digital, where I was mostly live tweeting for Heineken, which is our key client at the time. And I was building those AI football bots that bantered with you while you watched the UEFA Champions League. But really, outside of the world of digital and strategy, what I'd like to share with you is a bit more about what else keeps me busy in my world. And these are the three things: cycling, wine, and iconic design. So on the left-hand side, that's my road bike. That's the AR30, not the rifle, but a classic US frame by Axis Bikes. Next, in the middle there is one of my favorite wines. That's called the Face Rip, which is a Petnat, the oldest form of champagne, which was an export wine from one of my favorite winemakers called the Blacksmith, who's based in Ribes Castile. And it's actually made just for Japan. And the reason why it's called the Face Rip, as per that design, which is designed by the winemaker's tattoo artist, it literally tastes like it's going to rip your face off, because it's super natural, super easy drinking, but really, really interesting and complex at the same time. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, that's the Percival Lafer sofa. So I'm obviously kidding. That's the third love, is of course sitting on that chair, and that's my girlfriend, Amika. But since we're talking digital transformation, someone else that's really close to my heart is this guy, who's one of the most famous innovators to have ever walked this earth. And I suppose there he is, sitting on the floor with what would have become the world's most famous computer. And that's Steve Jobs, I suppose the zaddy of innovation, who once said something so profound. He said that innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity rather than a threat. And the more the world shifts and changes, I certainly am under the impression that, the more opportunities there are for us to unlock, given all these changes that we're experiencing. And if we look at the world changing, these are all the different things that I suppose brands, businesses, companies need to compete with, along with all these other things for people's attention. So every minute of every day, there are 42 million WhatsApps being sent out, 1.4 million phone calls are being had, 347 Instagram stories, 208,000 Zoom calls, and around 28 Spotify tracks every minute of every day. And these are all the things that are happening around the world. And I suppose the reality is that this is how long you have to actually grab someone's attention. That's 1 second less than a goldfish. And I really love how Tim in his talk spoke about, how digital transformation involves having a customer orientation, a consumer first orientation in our world of communication, is what we'd say. So I think the powerful question here really is, what are we doing to demand as well as to hold people's attention, given that it's so finite and there's so many other things that consumers would rather be doing than interacting with brands and interacting with businesses and companies. And in this new world where attention has in fact become this new currency, it appears as though we've had two accelerants, certainly what I'm seeing, that have shaped how brands, how companies and people have transformed over the past couple of years. And I suppose before we look ahead, let's look back to just over a year ago, where we saw COVID being this really real and rapid accelerant. And I think this, as much as it is a classic meme, I really did enjoy this in the early stages of lockdown, when the entire world was faced with this thing. We really did see entire companies being transformed, forced into remote working, having no choice but to adapt. And I really love this meme. So I think, who is responsible for digital transformation at your company? A lot of people would answer C, COVID-19. It wasn't the CEO, it wasn't the CTO, it was absolutely COVID. Working from home went from an acronym to this exponential investment overnight. Microsoft Teams saw a 70% increase in users over a 3-month period, which I think is so interesting, just the first 3 months of the pandemic. But as we look forward, for me, there seems to be a new accelerant that's come back into the fold as we move not just to a new, but a far better normal. And that accelerant is culture. So to stay relevant in 2021 and beyond, I'm certainly of the opinion that brands need to behave like living and breathing entities that constantly evolve with the world around them. So in Tim's discussion, what I really enjoyed when he spoke about the fact that businesses that embrace digital transformation, they've got the ability to morph, this ability to adapt in response to moments in time, all while remaining unmistakably themselves, like Bowie. Being able to transcend music, fashion, and even gender was something that he so famously did as he walked this earth. And I suppose because the world is constantly in flux, there is a whole lot more than ever before for brands to have to keep up with this ever-changing world that we're in. It's a better normal that's filled with all these opportunities, new behaviors, and new experiences, which I suppose is equal parts exciting, but also equal parts frightening. Looking at things like new audiences, new behaviors, new platforms, with TikTok being, so many different social media platforms exist, but TikTok suddenly came into the fold and became really, really exciting for people. Massive double, even triple digit growth that we've seen over the past couple of years since the app has been a part of culture. New moments, messages, experiences, new technologies, new rules, content, expectations, conventions being absolutely broken and shattered, and also new growth. And I suppose these are just some of the things that many of you are either experiencing for the first time or continue to experience with your brand, with your business, or with your company. But I think the far more interesting question to ask, at least from a communication standpoint, is when it comes to culture, when it comes to moving at the speed of COVID, are we moving fast enough? And to do this, I challenge us to stop thinking about digital ideas. Let's not talk about what the digital idea is. Let's talk about ideas for a digital world. What ideas can we create that are so innately of the time? Because the smartphone is where the majority of this world spends all of their time. So in the background here, this is not Air Jordan. This is AR Jordan, which is literally a shoppable augmented reality filter, the first of its kind, only available on Snapchat for the latest Jordan sneaker drop that you could shop within a specific location in LA. This was some work done by RGA, one of the world's leading digital companies. I think what this work has shown is that the way that people shop has fundamentally changed. And the only thing that hasn't changed is that physical retail is not going away by all means. Boring retail is going away. And that for me is what digital transformation is all about. Digital transformation is this. It's Gucci being able to put out 90-ish looks, around 500-ish items every 12 weeks, delivered straight to your smartphone via the Vogue homepage, as well as Gucci's social media at lightning speed. Like seriously, that's astonishing. And I love this thought of fixed versus flex. I think the burden of digital transformation doesn't always need to be felt by your entire company, by your entire brand and business. I think it's more around looking at what other people, what other entities, what other companies could we collaborate with. This idea of collab is only something that you see within the cultural landscape. I think that working with flexible resource, bringing in bespoke people or companies to help at least make a start at the digital transformation journey, which is very complex and meaty. I think this idea of a combination of fixed versus flex is really powerful. Digital transformation for me is this store by Nike in Melrose in LA, the first ever live store that the company has ever done. Everything from the product selection, discounts, store design to the music playlist is literally based on data. And I think this idea of iterating to innovate is key. Ensuring that you punch smart and I suppose giving yourself some time to learn and to adapt. Nike started with that one completely digitized store. They didn't completely change every one of their stores across the world. They decided to test and learn, starting with one pilot or concept, and then they continue to evolve that. Digital transformation is Burger King. I think the misconception about digital transformation is certainly that it has to be expensive, that it's a costly exercise. And if you look at something as simple as Instagram, Burger King is always around the idea of hacking. They've got a concept that they call hackvertising. And that's how they actually approach creativity. How can they hack a problem? Because that leads to a far more interesting solution. So what they did here on Instagram is that they allowed using the Instagram poll feature, and they turned that into a way to customize your own Whopper. Because Burger King is all about having it your way, so they wanted to put the power into the hands of the consumer. So really all you need in terms of digital transformation is a belief or an ideology that people believe in. In Burger King's case, theirs is hackvertising. So I really love this culture of hacking that exists within the connected age that we live in. I think it's about providing a sense of utility for people on a daily basis and hacking some key problems to get to more interesting solutions. That for me is how to digitally transform one's business. So I suppose the interesting question is, how could we as agencies, as brands, as creative thinkers hack certain problems to get to a better result? You know, in my career at the beginning stages, I always used to attend hackathons with the Silicon Cape guys, often at Workshop 17, just chatting about and hacking problems. You know, often we went from a political issue to helping out in terms of a mining solution, and became really, really interesting. So I just love this idea of hacking as a powerful orientation to get to more interesting solutions. And this guy, Burger King's ex-head of marketing, Fernando Mercado, said something really, really profound. He said that you have to understand your brand and know what it stands for. Only once you do this will you be able to truly do something transformative. And I challenge everyone to look at the brands that you work on, the companies that you work on. Do we have a clear and true understanding of who we are, what we stand for? Because I think once we do that, then we have the opportunity to get into bigger topics like digital transformation. But ultimately, I think this is what it comes down to for brands and agencies alike in the world of digital transformation. If we can do at least one or two of these things, I think we would have come a long way. This idea of agility, you know, Tim spoke to this as well. How do we do things a bit faster, a bit quicker, in unexpected ways? Be more focused. This idea of chunking, you know, behavioral science theory talks to this concept. People retain things in bite-sized chunks faster, but I also think we can get to more interesting results if we start to chunk the way that we approach things. Nike just started with that one store in LA that they wanted to turn into a live store. Once they've tested and learned, the same with Amazon in terms of that store, that contactless store that they created. Let's focus on one or two or three different stores, and how can we start to evolve as we understand and learn a bit more. More collaborative. I think, you know, more than brutal simplicity of thought, which is our positioning, which is our philosophy as a company, this idea that simpler messages enter the brain faster and stay there longer. You know, Martin Luther King, I have a dream, just 3 words, one of the world's most powerful and compelling speeches. But broader than that is this idea of collaboration or diversity of thought. Diverse solutions, diverse people, diverse backgrounds, all around the table solving a problem leads to far more interesting solutions. Let's free ourselves up to experiment more, to test, to learn, to try things. And then lastly, this idea of not just relevance, but resonance. How do we do something that's truly from a customer, from a consumer first point of view? Because ultimately, you know, all these other things like your Netflix and your Instagram feed are competing for the same attention as brands. But Bob Greenberg, who's the co-founder of RGA, the world's leading digital creative company, definitely said it best. Reinventing our model, he says, is a problem that we create for ourselves every 9 years. So Bob Greenberg and his associates believe in this idea of numerology, where every 9 years they completely reinvent their business model. So they went from a special effects company specializing in movie titles many, many years ago, to special effects in film production, to special effects in commercials, then to a digital boutique, then to a fully serviced digital agency, and now to an agency for the connected age, where they talk about designing brands for a more human future. Every single 9 years, they've completely reinvented themselves. That, for me, is what digital transformation is all about. But I suppose to leave you with the provocative question, why should we wait to innovate, evolve, take a risk, and move at the speed of these 2 new accelerants that have shaped the way we live? Why wait to be disrupted? What can we do to get ahead of the curve, ahead of the game? You know, RJ always talk about this idea of being one step ahead of disruption. And I really, really love that orientation. Whether it's COVID or culture, I think rather have your business choose to adapt rather than being forced to adapt. And that should hopefully challenge you guys in terms of your perspective of what digital transformation is and what it means for communication. Jabulani Sibiwa on my team, I think he's listening. He's like, you're going to shake the tables today. So I hope that I've reached that KPI, that I've shaken the tables a little bit and hopefully challenged your perception on digital transformation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Narieta. Thank you, Team Vega, for having me on board.
Keke, it's always a pleasure. I found it so stimulating to listen to both you and Tim. What I always love seeing when synergy starts happening between speakers, one of the things that I just wanted to point out before we go into the discussion, and it's genuinely something that comes from all the Vega Virtual Talks we've done so far, is that it seems like we need to listen to ourselves and say the people first. So one of the key things that do stand out is we need to be more mindful of how do we put people first And everything that we design, conceptualize, the solutions we present, ultimately it's about how do we answer to the real need and the real value that we're creating. I also found that there's a key thing that links with that is that what Tim also said is that, you know, it needs to be enabled by technology. Technology is not the first thing. It's a thing that actually enables whatever it is that the real need and the real value is. Right, let's move straight into discussion. We've taken 3 questions that were submitted by those that have RSVP'd. So thank you for submitting your questions, and lucky you if your question was selected. But what we did is we just selected the questions that we found had more relevance to the topic or was not necessarily completely answered in the discussion and may actually just add or complement a little bit more. First question we're going to ask and discuss is, digital transformation can be a complicated and expensive process. How can organizations experiment or pilot these projects? And it came through a little bit in your discussion already, where we talk about iteration and experimentation. So Tim, if you don't mind, would you tackle this question and respond to it?
Yes, thanks, Narita. Happy to. And I think I'm actually going to pick this one up right where KK left off. I love that last slide, that final quote that said, "Why wait to be disrupted?" And this is something that I find many of my clients and many of the both corporates and startups that I'm working with just have this challenge. They don't know where to start. And we always say to them, well, you know, the best time to start your digital transformation was probably 10 years ago, but the next best time to start is right now. And when it comes to kickstarting your digital transformation, yes, if you're talking about an end-to-end systems integration, enterprise resource management process, something that involves deep technical expertise, of course it's going to be complicated and expensive. But when you embark on your digital transformation journey, it doesn't have to be that way. There are a lot of things that you can do to kickstart your journey that are a lot more cost effective and simple. And the first thing that a business would need to do, what I always say is the most important thing, is to become crystal clear on your vision. So you need to have a vision for what your digitally transformed business of the future will look like. There's actually an exercise that I run with many of my clients where we say, cast your mind forward to 10 years time. And imagine that you have landed, your business has landed on the front page of Time magazine for some sort of digital transformation feat. The question is, what does that article read? What does the headline read about that new vision that you've been able to capture and create this digital transformation? And we do this approach where we take a process of forward back thinking. So we develop that future state vision with our clients, and then we work backwards to figure out the gap analysis of what initiatives need to take place today to start working towards that future that we set ourselves towards. And the starting points along that journey, we often refer to as minimum viable changes, or MVCs. And those MVCs could be things that are as small as the types of behaviors or the tools that we use to communicate on a daily basis, the systems that run our business, the processes that help us to deliver a product to service to market. And making these incremental changes over time would then lead towards a broader digital transformation strategy. And it's important that each and every one of these activities are linked to that future state vision. Because if they aren't, then we always say that there's a big threat that your company starts committing random acts of digital and sporadically trying to adopt new technologies rather than following a very specific path. So it doesn't matter how small the steps are that you take, but it's really important that those steps that you take are headed in the right direction towards that future state vision.
Spot on, Tim. Thank you for that advice. At the end, like what you say, it's the rather make it relevant than going all big and then you actually went the complete wrong direction. Let's have a look at question 2. What role does digital transformation play in the area of consumer privacy, particularly for brands that actively collect first-person data for marketing activities? As you all know, the POPIA Act came into place from yesterday, so everybody's a little bit rattled and asking questions around it. So we thought this question was quite relevant. Keke, would you mind responding to this one?
Absolutely, yeah. I think What's really interesting about this question, at least from a communication point of view, and I get really excited when questions like these get asked, because it's just showing how much things have changed over the past few years, this rapid acceleration of digital, of culture, and all these things happening. I think what's very interesting about the puppy emails that came out, comes to mind specifically. I definitely closed and deleted, I think, almost all of them except for one. So my favorite wine bar and shop, Public, they released one, and if there are any Notorious B.I.G. fans, you'll know exactly what they're talking about, where they said, "I love it when you call me Big Puppy," as like the way to capture attention in their headline. So that was the only one that I read, which was quite interesting. But I think what's very compelling and reassuring, I suppose, from the consumer's perspective, is that privacy has moved from this thing that was nice to have over there, and now it's been a fundamental human right. And we spoke about Apple. Tim spoke about Apple earlier in his discussion, and Apple's a creative company for me first and foremost. The world's most valuable company, $2 trillion company. They completely took on privacy, and they championed it as a brand, as a business, as a company, with a really simple campaign where they said, "We are in the business of staying out of yours." What a lovely sentiment. And I think what was really powerful about that is that they decided to be the brand that was going to speak about it and to be the first brand to make a difference. So, in that latest iPhone update, you have the choice to say, "I will share my data or allow companies to track my data, or I won't." Giving people the empowerment to make the decision rather than businesses just suddenly being able to take your data without you even knowing about it. Because who reads terms and conditions? I certainly don't. So I think that's very, very interesting from a consumer side. I think from a brand side, what's going to be quite difficult is that, again, it goes back to this conversation around data obsession. I think everyone is talking about it. It's become such a buzzword, but data is as much everything as it is nothing, especially if companies can't access it. So the more and more the consumer has the human right to their privacy and to take their privacy back from all of these companies, I think it's going to be a big challenge, again, where brands cannot push communication the whole time. What's that two-way dialogue or communication that we can start to have where people are actively seeking us out instead of us trying to convince them or coerce them to pay attention to us? I think we need to demand attention. We need to do things that people want to take notice of. People are able to binge Netflix for like 15 hours a day, but can't spend 10 seconds watching an advert. I think that says a whole lot about the expectation that, the increasing expectation that people are going to have over brands. What are you going to do to compete for my attention?
And does it at all even add value?
Absolutely.
That's the filter. Keke, thank you so much for this third question. I'm actually going to ask the two of you to contribute to it. So someone provided this one where they asked, where do you see digital transformation in the next 5 years? So what are we looking at? Who would like to go for it?
I don't mind giving that one a go. Thanks, Narita. This one's really interesting to me. And I think that, a reflection that I've had, Narita spoke nicely around how there's clearly a common link between what myself and Keke both spoke about. And I think, to me, one of the most common links over there was the customer. The fact that digital transformation, whether we look at it through the lens of sort of corporate business or through creativity and communications, always comes down to the customer, and we need to solve for the customer's needs. So I think that is something that is not going to change in the next 5 years, but perhaps the way in which we deliver on those customer needs will change. And maybe a bit of a futuristic glance over here, but if you think of something like Elon Musk's Neuralink, he has many different projects, the likes of Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal, and so forth. But I'm keeping a close eye on this Neuralink project because it's essentially what they call a brain-machine interface. So quite literally a computer chip that taps into your brain and helps to engage with your thoughts and intuitively and proactively understand what it is that you want as an individual. And there are hundreds and thousands of use cases over here, from healthcare, helping to regenerate certain nerves or certain impulses that people otherwise would have lost through disease. It has many sort of communication use cases where people could communicate with brands or with their devices or with their family and friends. And I think it's definitely got a number of use cases from a data perspective, making use of customer data in a way that really enriches the human experience. So if I need a new pair of sneakers, instead of me going online and searching for it, perhaps I would be able to just dream up what my perfect pair of sneakers looks like. Imagine what they, what the size would be, what the colors would be, what the brand would be, and next thing I know, I can intuitively place an order right from my brain. So that's a bit of a futurist view, but KK, what do you think about this one?
Cool. I think, Tim, I'll approach it from a creative lens, because I saw Tatiana just had a comment here where it says creative or creativity in the digital transformation is a lot clearer in my mind now, which I totally resonate with. So I'm glad that that was made clearer for you. I think just bearing that comment in mind, for me, digital transformation in the next 5 years, if I look at where creativity is right now on the smartphone, is that creativity is now open source. If you look at TikTok, if you look at all these social media platforms where anyone can become a creator, anyone can become an influencer overnight. And I think that digital transformation over the next 5 years will become more open source, where suddenly brands don't have to do the job on their own. They can tap into a completely widely and freely available resource. We've seen this a lot with coding. If you look at the world of coding and how that's evolved, open APIs and that sort of world, I think that being applied to how businesses can transform themselves, I think will be very interesting. So creativity being open sourced and the creativity stemming from the smartphone, really. And I think that'll start to replicate itself across business. So businesses being able to tap into all this open source knowledge, data, insight, and skill sets, actually.
Brilliant. Thank you both. I'm just mindful of time, but I am going to say, why don't we just see if there's maybe a question? So let's allow a question from the audience. If you would like to ask a question to either Tim or Keke, you can raise your hand and then I'll unmute you and you will be able to ask a question. So is there anybody that would like to ask a question?
If there's a question, if there's one that someone wants to write in the chat, if they're not feeling too...
They're not feeling too brave, you can type it out.
Yeah,
we can
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's an immediate question. I'm going to say thank you to both the speakers. It's been phenomenal to have you on the chat. I see there was a comment coming in now. Okay, we'll ask Gloria just now to ask her question. Gloria, I'm going to unmute you quickly if you would like to talk. Let's just see. So her question is, how can you understand your customers? Now, that's a loaded question. Keke or Tim, would you like to give it a go? And how would you take that question?
So I see Gloria's asked to be unmuted. Maybe there's a bit more to that question. Let's see if there is, but then I'd be happy to take it.
Hello guys, thank you so much. So my question will be, how can you understand your customer, especially when they want to be part of this online business, being online, have their social media page, but they don't see it as a work? So how can you make them understand that is like a job and they really need to put a budget on it to be able to see results?
So I think that's an interesting question. I can certainly talk to that from a social, digital, and communications perspective. I think that, our starting point, our departure point for any strategy, for any creative campaign, for any project, whether it's, a piece of new business or whether it's a proposal that we're putting together, our departure point is always the consumer, first and foremost. And for us, that's around understanding underlying motivations that drive action and behavior. So what is this audience looking for? What issues are they dealing with? What barriers are there that we can perhaps overcome, especially when we're talking in the digital and social space within the South African and African context? I think there's a lot of limited access to a lot of technologies. If you look countrywide, especially in South Africa being the world's most unequal country, that's got its own set of complexities that we need to understand and deal with. So for me, I think approaching the consumer and being consumer first is the way to go. And research, there's big research companies around the country, around the world that specialize in research. But I think it starts with a conversation, because that's ultimately what research is. Talking to your audience, whether it's a focus group or just walking the streets. I know in level 4, so not the easiest right now, but certainly when things open up, I'm always of the opinion that a conversation is going to be your most powerful tool. But in the absence of that, I think looking at digital forums, looking at leveraging your existing database, how do you start to build out surveys with clear incentives to get people to enter, and where you can test and learn about your audience and understand exactly what it is they're looking for, would just be a few strategies that come to mind initially.
That's great. Thank you, Keke. I cannot agree more. I'm a keen believer that it's all about the art of asking the right questions for understanding. So brilliant. Thank you for also posting that question, Gloria. Based on time, I'm going to say this is it for Vega Talks number 7, Digital Transformation. Keke, Tim, it's been wonderful having you on this discussion. We got such good feedback in the comment boxes as well to say thank you and for your contribution. And we look forward to another round of Vega Talks for the next one coming up in about 6 weeks' time. So Keke, Tim, thank you. It's been brilliant having you on board.
Thank you, Narita. Great way to spend a Friday. Much appreciated.
Can't ask for better.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was great.
Great, everybody. Have a good Friday, and thank you for dialing, and much appreciated.